Hey there, it's RJ Curtis. I'm the executive director for CRS, and welcome to the August episode of CRS360. This is a webinar series designed to bring you year-round content that we think is important to all stakeholders in country music. Now, CRS360 took a pause in July because it's a really busy vacation month, and we hope you got some time off too. On a personal note, I think I spent a lot of July basically eating my way across Italy. So now a slightly larger version of me is very excited to be back at work today. And we are back at it. We're going to take a look at what's feeling like one of the strongest music cycles for country music in at least a decade. And we've been talking about this for the past year. In fact, I was looking at archives of CRS 360s, and we talked about the music cycle about this time last year. So it's probably time to do it again in summer of 2024, which is really been extraordinary in the past few weeks. And think about it. Shabuzi had a multiple week #1 single at country radio with the Bar song. And then next, pop superstar Post Malone collaborated with country juggernaut Morgan Wallen for I Had Some Help, another multiple week #1 at Media Base. And just this past week, Post Malone has the #1 album in all of music with his country debut, F1 Trillion. And now this weekend, Drew Baldridge has made history as the first ever independent country artist to top the media-based country singles chart. So a lot's happening right now. It's all very, very exciting. We're all taking it in. Everyone's processing it and finding how to handle it and how to make it right for their radio station or whatever platform that they're programming. And I think the question that we want to look at today is this a moment or is it a movement? And if it's just a moment, what do we do to sustain it so that it becomes a movement? And also, our typical best practices for programming our music changing for radio, DSPs, and basically all delivery platforms because of this onslaught of great music that everyone's excited about. And I'm excited because we have a really strong panel to talk about all this today. So I'm going to hand it over to our very capable moderator, CRB board member and partner at Albright, O'Malley, and Brenner. Please welcome Kenny J.
Of all these releases that are coming out from all these artists, and we're playing so many songs from Morgan, and we're playing so many songs from Post Malone, what does our recurrent category look like a year from now, and are you concerned?
In terms of what it will exactly look like a year from now versus what it looks like now a year ago from today, yeah, the pacing and the approach has changed. Is it something that is personally giving me concern? Of course, talking about SiriusXM, the highway here, which I'm part of the programming team. No, I don't believe so. I mean, obviously, we have a glut of great performing tracks that can, function in our currents and our recurrents from the same artist, many times from the same project. But I think that there's no worry to me about that being repetitive because the pace in these releases and these artists continues to ramp up to kind of meet the demand as well.
So I'm going to reintroduce all of our panelists here in just a moment, but there's some really interesting insights into this moment or this movement or what we've got going on right now. And Brittany Johnson has been really kind of at the base level of this. When you think about all the things that have been coming out of the Big Loud building during your particular time there, you not only being a regional and seeing it from the radio side, but then you moving over to the streaming side and seeing the metrics and the analytics. Do you have a sense and a feel that 2025 is going to look like 2024 did?
Yeah, I think it is going to look the exact same, if not more, just ramped up. I think that there is such a spotlight on country right now that everybody is really doubling down on it. And I think that, yeah, it's only going to continue to go up in more music. I think the amount of music that is coming out right now, and you have artists that are releasing albums that have 20 plus songs, even upwards of 30, the amount of music that we have coming out is going to be a lot. And I think it's only going to continue into 2025. Totally.
And when you were looking at it through the streaming lens specifically, were you looking at recurrent and gold records, or was it just all a focus for you on what's current, what's out now, and how is it doing now?
Yeah, you know, from the streaming side, more when we look at kind of like playlisting, if you want to kind of compare a radio playlist versus a streaming playlist, it's not really in the sense of golden recurrent and having, you know, yes, you have some playlists that are kind of like a recurrent playlist, if you will, or kind of like a gold playlist. But I mean, I think that on the streaming side, there's so many spots across the board that songs can fit, that it's all just kind of about the massive amount of music that's out there. So that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, there's just a lot of ways that we can take this big of a conversation too, and I'm really glad that the folks that are on this panel are here. Get to introduce you in your new position here in just a second. I'm gonna let you do that. Kathleen Shea, soon to be Kathleen St. Clair from SiriusXM. She programs The Highway, is here as well as we're recording this. It is her wedding week. And Sam, you were really kind of the inspiration for this. Sam Milkman from Coleman Insights. And Sam, you know, you wrote this really interesting article. I think that just kind of got everybody thinking and got the wheels turning. And I'm going to come to you here in just a second. But we are here today on behalf of Country Radio Seminar. And CRS, crazy to think it's going to be less than 6 months until we get back together again in Nashville. Got some really great takeaways and some things that are going to really touch everybody on every side of the business here. We're going to talk about how do we all capitalize on the popularity of the music as a whole, because everybody is going to, all boats rise in this when the music is just better. We can look at particular indicators, whether you're running a radio station, whether you're running a streaming company, whether you're programming a satellite radio station, whether you're doing research. There's a lot of different indicators that we can all look for, and it'll be interesting to see everybody's different lens on that. A really interesting thing for me that I want to make sure that we all have a very clear takeaway from is how do we satisfy the core of country? We've made a mistake before there, and I can point back to 12 years ago when everybody kind of left the party and the core left right along with them, and then we really didn't know what to do as a country music format for a while. So we're going to talk about making sure the core is satisfied with this new party that we've got going on. And then Sam, I'd love to have some conversation about what we should be looking and what we should be asking our audience from a research standpoint, and really making sure that we're in tune not only with the P1s that we have, but with all these new influx and infusion of new folks listening to the format, what they like and what they're not liking about the format. So I guess, Sam, I'm gonna start with you. You know, you kind of posed the question here, like, what are we in? What are you feeling? Are we, as a country format, are we in a movement? Are we in a moment? What are you thinking?
You know, I'm hoping it's a movement. The audience is telling us that something has changed, something great is happening, that they recognize that there are lots of interesting new artists, new sounds, less restrictions in what they might be hearing. The walls are down to some extent, and they feel like they're in control, you know, maybe for the first time. And all of that together tells us that this isn't just a song or two or just a collection of songs, but something is changing, and something is changing generally for the better, just as long as we can all get our arms around it and optimize what is happening here.
You've seen music research through a lot of different lenses and a lot of different cycles and a lot of different formats. I want to talk about that here in just a second. And it's interesting because when we look at it from just a day-to-day radio standpoint, we see total positive and like a lot scores from songs right now at a high point that we haven't seen in a long time. So I like to think glass half full in this. And I think just the state of the radio business of itself, when we look at it just through the radio lens, there's a little more pessimism there. I just think from an industry standpoint. So I want to talk more about how this compares to other formats in just a second. But Kathleen, you know, you think about the highway on SiriusXM. It's a really great follow. When we talk about indicators, this is a really great follow for anybody that has access to media base. You guys are always out front on music and trying to find the next thing. How has the last year or so felt for you when we look at a moment or a movement?
I mean, I think I'll definitely double down on what I believe at least everybody has said one point in this call, that the pace is enormous. I mean, the amount of new releases that are coming and the early indicators that we see that something is testing positive from new artists who are brand new to the format, or maybe are just brand new artists themselves, is incredible. The scores that we're seeing on a lot of the songs that I think we're talking about here, some of these, you know, kind of unexpected number ones, have been amazing. And I do think that just within my time at the Highway and at SiriusXM, our approach to when we feel a song has raised its hand or is ready for kind of like the prime time on the highway is a lot faster than it was previously. I will say that, you know, after our acquisition with Pandora as well, being able to see, you know, on the streaming side, early indication from something that was dropped on a Friday that may be ready to go into highway rotation on that Monday, which previously was unheard of. Definitely, it feels like we're able to take the approach of almost more of a DSP in terms of like a new music Friday, or, you know, approaching the highways playlist kind of similar to something as, you know, a hot country playlist, which, you know, is the pace now that I think just the attention kind of demands.
So there's a little more of an element for everybody to have to be a little more nimble with how we're doing all of the music and how fast it's coming. And Sam, when you think about all these different cycles that we have, I don't like to think that it's country's turn. I just don't think music cycles go through turns. And there was a Wall Street Journal article recently that just kind of announced, hey, it's country music's turn. I think the music really dictates if you get a turn or not. But when you look back at, you know, you've done top 40 and you've done hip hop and you've seen these cycles come in and come out and go up and go down. Like, where do you see country in that scope right now?
Well, I'm hoping it's more like alternative in the early 90s. And the job changes when something like that starts to happen. And it's no longer about, oh my God, we're looking for a couple of songs to add this week, but we don't want to miss anything. And how are we going to fit all this music in? And are we really in tune with what's going on out there? Because, you know, we certainly could hide inside the radio station and go, we have enough colors to paint with right now, right? So we could just be fine, but we're going to miss it if we're not really listening to what the audience is doing and what they're talking about right now. They're just going to think that we're, you know, that we're stale. You know, and you've heard this expression from listeners before. You know, why are they introducing this as new music where that album has been out, or I heard it, you know, right?
Fifth
We
single,
just don't
yeah.
want to be that person who's so far behind in this moment, I think.
Brittany Johnson, congratulations on your new job with the Core, doing day-to-day artist management. I'm excited for what you're going to build and the artists that you're going to work with, and you can talk about that at some point, maybe at CRS in the hallway with everybody, and on all the things that you're going to be doing. But when you think
Yes.
about your time at Big Loud, and you're at the front end of this musical revolution, I think back to the first time when I was there with you and they played Seven Summers, and it was kind of that moment of like, oh my, like this is bigger than the format. This is going to go into other places. You're setting up Post Malone, knowing it's going to be across multiple genres. You're setting up Morgan. What was the internal feeling when you got, as these songs came in? What was the internal feeling? Did you just know right at that moment, like, wow, banger alert, this is going, like, get ready, here we come?
I mean, even in the Morgan days, like I guess that was 2021 before the Dangerous album, everybody knew, of course, that that was an incredible album, but did not expect it to be such a cross-genre album and really catapult Morgan's career so much. And obviously, One Thing at a Time is such a massive, massive album, and has so many songs that are cross-genre appeal. But yeah, I mean, I think internally at Big Loud, everybody definitely knew, you know, Morgan, so much of that was going to be really hot. And of course, leading up and us getting to be kind of the Nashville team that got to partner with Mercury and Republic with the Post Malone rollout, and just be able to be that helping hand down in Nashville. The energy around that album, I think anybody could tell you in Nashville, was electric. And even from our office to talking to writers to hearing artists talk about it, it was, you knew that there was going to be something very massive and very special about that. And
And it's
obviously numbers tell.
And it's good to hear you say that you feel that there's more of that coming. That's really
Mhm.
reassuring. And Kathleen, coming back to you, you mentioned something really interesting, how you can look at Pandora and you can use Pandora info on the highway as quick as from a Friday to a Monday. So here we are, we're sitting here at the time of this recording, in August, we have a full week's worth of Post Malone data to use to program our radio stations. And I remember when I looked last week, there were already, I think, 14 songs, over 3 million streams. That doesn't even include video. It was just insanely consuming 2 days out of the gate. And that didn't even include the 9 songs that he dropped, later that day. Is there anything from the Post Malone album that you've seen here over the last couple of days that is not necessarily quote unquote a single, but that when we're talking about what Sam mentioned in listening to the audience and being where the audience is there something else that you've seen that's kind of raised its hand?
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now, I'm playing 3 tracks from the Post Malone album already in our current rotation, which, for scheduling log purposes is maybe a little bit of a headache, but is kind of something that I feel we are required to do. Otherwise, you are missing the moment here. Obviously, there's going to be people coming to you with their focus and their radio ad date and their single. And for some of these albums and some of these releases, it's just not enough to be supporting sometimes that single track. So yeah, I will say, of course, over the weekend, one of the big indicators that we look at from Pandora is something that we call a Q score, which is basically just a tabulation of thumbs up to thumbs down from our users. A 0 being, net neutral, same amount up and down, anything above that positive and a good indicator. And many of these Post Malone songs, I mean, they've got a number that's close to 100, which is basically unheard of, except for, maybe some Morgan tracks and previous things that we've played that have been these, big surprises. So what you mentioned earlier, kind of about making sure you don't lose your core while embracing these, core highway listeners are huge fans of this project, and we have the numbers to prove it. So that's not even something that we're scared of, at least in this time, in this moment. The audience seems to have the same energy for these tracks that they have for what you would consider, maybe quote unquote legacy highway acts that they are very familiar with, that we have played and exposed on the channel over several years.
We had 0 negatives, by the way, when we flash polled in one of our current research cycles. We flash polled, what do you think of this Post Malone thing? Are you tired of it? Are you excited about it? There were some people that actually didn't know who Post Malone was before, which was kind of hard, I think, for all of us as music fans to kind of wrap our heads around. But he coming to country has actually brought some new fans. Has actually gained some new fans coming to country. And Kathleen, you touched on something really interesting there that I want to come back to. But Sam, when you think about just looking at consumption as part of the music conversation, let's just pretend we're at a broadcast radio station. Is there an indicator that you're looking for in that? And then Kathleen, I'm going to come back to you and I want to ask you, is there something that we should be asking for, because you do get to see some really interesting Pandora info?
Well, we used to say that you got to be careful with streaming because it's all yes votes and you don't see the no votes. Pandora has gotten around that, right? And there are other ways to look at things, but it now is a great indicator. And broadening the lens, we are seeing new audience come into the country radio stations that we study. That's for sure. And that you are borrowing audience, you are sharing audience with lots of different formats right now. And I just think we all need to be a little bit inviting in terms of these, don't know who Post Malone is, great, but let's make sure that we do the right job of introducing Post Malone the way we and he want him to be introduced to this audience. Tell the story the way we want to tell the story, authentically, but tell the story, or we're going to lose the moment, and I think that wraps around a lot of what's going on here. Like, we've got to explain it, Um, the existing audience, I think every industry I have is that they like what's going on here. Yes, you're going to start hearing people say it's not real country and it's too pop. Those kind of comments have always been around, by the way. That's not a new thing. Okay. But let's not fan the flames of that, and let's not let that message get shaped in a way we don't want it to be shaped. Right. And the other side of it is, let's introduce this new audience to the format. I mean, there are so many great things that have been going on here. They have so many preconceived notions about where the format is and what it does. There's another opportunity to introduce people and have them turn into fans that we could have for decades.
I like the welcoming angle of what you just said. If you like X, we really think you're going to like Y. Like, if you think about it as you're inviting somebody to your house for the first time, if they're coming to the party and there's people there at your house that already have been at your house, they know where the bathroom is, they know where the kitchen is, they know where the basement is, they know where the beers are. We need to do the same thing and have that same mentality for our audiences if we're looking at it through a pure radio lens. And again, coming back to those indicators in streaming, Kathleen, I'll come to you first, and then Brittany, put your streaming hat on for a second. Anything else I should be looking for if I'm sitting at a broadcast radio station? Anything else I should be looking for to help me identify and find the right thing to make these decisions and jump out on something?
Yeah, I mean, I really just think that Sam like hit the nail on the head here. This moment is already a huge win consumption wise for these artists and for these coastal labels. And I think what we need to be asking ourselves is, how is this going to be a win for us? And how can we sustain this for what we do in our sector of the industry? And look, at the end of the day, there are hugely consuming songs that I've tried before on the highway and it didn't test with my audience. Like, that's the reality. There's going to be no guarantee, but you can't, not to be cliche, let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game, because if you are looking for a sure bet, you're going to take too long and you're going to miss being part of the conversation. I think that people who, have a fear that their audience is going to reject, kind of this new sonic movement or just this new moment. If you're just working based on that assumption, you never know until you try. So, obviously you're going to have to be intentional about what you do. We can't play everything. We all wish that we could, but you kind of just have to, in order to get the reward, you have to take the risk.
Yeah, and Brittany, any other indicators we should be looking for just sitting at a radio station? Because I think that's the number one question that I get from radio sector of, how do I find and identify the hits faster?
Yeah, I mean, I think another tool that sometimes can not be used, but like Shazam is just another tool outside of just regular consumption, streaming numbers. But Shazam is obviously somebody actively going, hearing the song somewhere, clicking the button and saying, what is that song? And, it may not be to the scale of seeing streams on a streaming platform like Spotify or Pandora or Amazon or Apple, but it still is an indicator that, hey, there is reactivity in your specific market for a radio station. I know when, I was doing promotion on the label side, that would be an indicator of saying, hey, there is some reaction happening, that they're hearing it at, it's being played at the Hobby Lobby over the speakers and somebody is hearing it and like Shazaming, they're curious what it is. Like, there's curiosity of that song. So maybe it's not into a regular rotation, but it's, hey, if you have a new music feature, like maybe there's an opportunity of testing it there. So just
And
another indicator.
yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because the indicators are all there. There are so many of them are public for us to go out and find them. Again, if we're sitting in a broadcast radio station, and Sam, I'm going to come to you in just a second. We're going to talk research as it pertains to songs and how we're going to research our audience and what they're liking and talking about when it comes to our format having a moment or having a movement. I just want to bring up, there's one example, and Kathleen, if you have any insight on this too, I'll let you add your thoughts. This Ella Langley and Riley Green song, I think, is a great example of music discovery in 2024. So this song, you can't open social media 2 months ago, 3 months ago without seeing this song absolutely everywhere. You pull up streaming, and I pull up streaming without video. I pull it up strictly audio, and I look and I'm like, wow, there's 11 million streams on this song. We're just going to put it into a B rotation at one of our stations and see what we have. And I got to tell you, I think there's, for broadcast radio specifically, there's a little bit of an element of like, oh, I'm going to get beat up. And I did. I got beat up. Well, that's not the single. And, other people were like, well, that's not a single and that's my spot. Everybody's fighting over the limited amount of shelf space at broadcast radio. But this song was just too big to ignore. All the indicators were there. It's actually performing and researching like a hit song here now, 10, 12 weeks later. And so when we just kind of broaden that conversation out, Sam, and you're thinking about like, okay, I got to get some audience insights and I got to figure out what is happening with the audience right now. What would you add to that from the research conversation to make sure that our audience is satisfied with what we're playing?
Well, I mean, it'd be a great time, not a sales pitch, but it'd be a great time for focus groups and get in a room with real country listeners, and hear them out about what is going on, what they think, play some music for them, and run through all of this, and let's stop talking to the same old people, and I mean the same people, and I mean the same old people all at the same time. But we're all a little bit stuck in a paradigm, which is, hey, we talk to, every week we talk to 50 people and they're between the age of blank and blank. And 100% of them listen to our radio station, and 60% of them are P1 already to our radio station. And also sometimes we run them through a screener and they like this and this and this and this, right? And then we're surprised when we get this, homogenized result at the end of that. Now, the smartest people I know are attacking, there's probably a nicer word for that, but rethinking all the basic elements of that design. What if I talk to people who don't use the radio? Because we know not everybody uses the radio, right? We know that all this discovery is taking place in elsewhere, right? So why don't we take down those barriers and start talking to people who we didn't used to talk to, right? Let's stop being overly influenced by what our boss's wife thinks, or husband thinks, and start hearing what real 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds are thinking about what's going on here. I think that this is where a lot of this comes from, think of the artists that radio people told you, well, we don't play blank, we don't play Zach Bryan. Why? Why? Right? Well, it's not radio material. Explain that to me. Because every time I go out of the house, all I see is the t-shirts from the shows, right? It's all anybody is talking about. Tell me how that doesn't somehow translate into radio. I don't get it, right? So again, attack all the premises, and I grew up with them all, so I'm right there with you. But let's bring the walls down and talk to real people and see what's going on.
I love the name that you just brought up, Sam. And Kathleen, I want to flip it to you for a quick second on the Zach Bryan conversation, because when we researched that record, we found that that was the biggest song that we had of 2024 before Posted Morgan came out. From a radio pure research standpoint, the indicator was there, and it was the level of spins. I think it was 17 or streams. It was the 17 million streams a week for however long it was before stations finally got on that record. Are you seeing that with your audience when you look at the research side, and when you look at the Zach Bryan conversation? What does that look like for the highway?
Yeah, Zach is definitely one of the, I think, kind of like proto artists of this movement. Like, this is kind of, the amount of success that he's been able to have with audiences that are young, maybe do not traditionally listen to the radio, maybe traditionally don't listen to country music, is really incredible. And what you had mentioned earlier with the Ella Lively and Riley Green was a really similar situation that happened to us with Something in the Orange. We got on it early and put it into research right away, and it was we were getting, bopped in the head. It was not working for
Same.
us. The indicators were not great, and we felt very strongly that Zach was going to be an important artist for us to feel like we had a place in that story, and that our listeners, would associate him with our channel. We stuck on it, and we were patient, and the numbers ended up turning around after there was more familiarity, after, in conjunction with the TikTok success and all the other streaming that was happening. And it ended up being a great tester for us just after, several weeks. So I think that that kind of approach, and we do have a current, we're playing Pink Skies currently on the highway too. So, obviously we learned a good lesson from that. We've tried other things, from other artists that are similar, I would think, like you could say, like artists like Tyler Childers kind of occupy a pretty similar fan base as that, to varying levels of success, but we learned that it can work, and we didn't let ourselves be too scared by the initial numbers that we saw on it. And I think learned a good lesson about the fact that if you give your audience a little bit of grace and a little bit of time, these artists that can kind of knee jerk feel unfamiliar or sonically outside of what they're used to hearing, can become familiar or even core artists for you.
I love that you said the word try, because that is definitely a spot that radio is in right now, especially if they add context to that word and why they're trying and why this makes sense for their audience. Brittany, I want to come back to you. I want you to put your label hat on for a second. You're the regional, and I realized that you didn't necessarily, you guys had this problem in a good way where it was, hey, we're playing two Morgan songs and we may not necessarily be playing someone else that was on the label at the time. But there's times when programmers at radio will come back to you and say, this just isn't working. And what is that? Help a programmer have that conversation with a label rep, because I think they avoid it. I think they don't want to step out on things because they don't want to necessarily feel like they're out of line with everybody's priorities, and they want to be a good partner and all the things. But every now and then we have to have that conversation if something just didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, one, just say it to a label partner, which I'm sure is easier said than done. Just like you guys are probably wanting us to just say something on our end too. I'm sure it's the same exact way, but I mean, I think that knowing it's something maybe is just not at the right time, in understanding what the hesitation's on, it helps build a better partnership, because at the end of the day, that's what it is between label radio, is we're all trying to have a great partnership to amplify country. So if we can all work at least better together, even if we're not playing and doing everything, doing every radio show or playing every song like we hoped, but at least if we can have a good partnership and good communication and help understand what our hesitations in just an open communication, that at the end of the day, I think is a win. And honestly, I hope that my old program directors and music directors can say that that was something that I focused on a lot, is the relationship side of it, versus at the end of the day, just getting the business done. Like, I actually really cared about creating that relationship so we could have a, open conversation and understand, okay, I get your hesitation. Let's talk about that. How can we work together, and I can help you understand what we are doing, so then you feel more comfortable.
Kathleen, there was the Zach Bryan conversation with Something in the Orange in particular was a great it was a great example of a song that streamed and we didn't see research on it either. I think maybe there was one or two West Coast markets that saw it because they were just kind of in that like poppy, cool, West Coast vibey kind of a thing. So when you have to go back to a label rep and you just say, "Hey, we tried this for X amount of times and it's just not working," how does that conversation go in your world?
I mean, when it comes to something that I mean, obviously with Zach specifically, that song did ultimately work for us. But when we're talking about something where maybe we did, step out on something and took that risk and we didn't see the reward of it, testing super, super well for us. I think, it's funny to be in this panel with Brittany because Brittany is one of the partners that, we worked with on the SiriusXM side. And, when we commit to playing something and to testing it, we also want it to succeed. We're not looking for the first sign that we need to drop something. But at the same time, as we've all mentioned in this call, the pace of releases that are like just these super smash, amazingly testing songs is something that we do have to always consider. We are trying to make this work. It's not working. We have something else. Maybe it is we're trying to make your focus work and your focus isn't working, but we feel like there's another track on this project that we'd like to introduce our audience to that we think might work better for our audience. It might not be the track that you're focusing on for terrestrial radio right now, but we would still love to, be a part of this project and support that artist. We've done that many times, just because there's maybe sometimes a better sonic fit or something that we just know our audience will respond to a little bit better, or assume, or guess, and it does pay off. So that's always, something that we can try to do as well if there's a way to still support, be good partners, but also, be serving our audience first and foremost.
And Sam, we'll talk the bigger picture research just in the cycle part of this to make sure that we don't make potentially same mistakes that other formats have made, or even same mistakes that we've made in the past. But when we're looking at just asking the audience, you talked about polling the audience, and you talked about doing some focus groups and things like that. What are a couple questions that we should be generally curious about with our audience right now, as it is with this bigger country pie that we have?
Kathleen used the word, and the word is fit. And it's a question we use in a lot of different contexts in our studies, right? But where does this song fit on the radio? Does it fit this station? Does it fit your station? Does it fit what we're doing? Because we all know that we could put songs in our research that will do very well in a list of 30, 40 songs, right? But it may or may not be the right idea for you in both directions, and so I think we need to begin to ask, does this song match what you think of my channel? Does this song fit into what we're doing here? And again, that could be asked in a very technical way in call out, or in library testing, or in a focus group, or in just a conversation. But how does all this fit together for you?
When we think about formats that are current, and Sam, when you look at other current formats, it doesn't always have to be built the same. For some reason in country, I always have had a sense that we start the song in overnights and then it moves its way up and it goes to A and then it goes back down to recurrent and then maybe it goes into gold. But not every song is the same, right? And you see that in other formats that you study as well.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, a totally different thoughts going through my head right now, Kenny, and that is, I saw a speech once by a guy who said, "True genius in entertainment, the first time you hear it, sounds like something you've never heard before, and you have no idea where it fits into your life." Okay, if you were really there and you heard Howard Stern as a DJ before the NBC and the DC 101 days, before he was the real deal, okay, people in the radio didn't get it. They thought he sounded too New York, too nasal, it couldn't follow the format. You know all these stories. They said the same thing about Rush Limbaugh. he was commenting on the news. How dare he? Like all these things went on because we didn't understand that something was happening, and we were looking at the world through this other lens, and we got to stop it. And we got to start looking at the world through the lens of the listener and the consumer. And they're gonna tell us. That's what we're lucky about. We don't actually need to answer these questions ourselves, right? They will answer these things for us.
And Kathleen, are you seeing the same thing on your end? Not every song necessarily has that same kind of shelf life or that same kind of up and down of a chart position or of a priority of a label.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for us, we have to be really careful when we're watching things that are having, maybe it's like the most viral song on TikTok of the year. That song's probably going to burn faster for your audience. Doesn't matter what category it's in that you're playing, because they're hearing it every time they open their phone as well as on your station. So there are definitely different behaviors that different songs, just based on the listener's own habits, what they're going to do and where they kind of need to move, let alone, situations where, I feel like I've done more packeting in this entire year than I have in my life, because I'm playing so many songs from, be it like the Twisters album or Post Malone or, whatever it might be. So definitely, there's no one size fits all approach. And I would recommend to anyone really just breaking it down week by week and making those moves really carefully rather than following, kind of a standard set routine, because things are going to need to different songs are going to need to behave different ways for your channel in order for them to not start to sound too repetitive, in order for them to get the exposure that they need, whatever it might be.
Where do we get the crazy idea that people find out about music in the middle of the night? Or, right, where did that come from? Right, other than it was convenient. I get it. The listeners don't know what our C's are. Okay, they know what's coming out of the speakers, right? And they know how something is explained to them. But we've just been putting one foot in front of the other, just like this, for so many years, that this is the way we do it. We got to stop doing that.
There is an element of that old AOR. I stop and I love this song and I brought it in and I'm going to play it in the middle of the day right now because it's the right time, that I really feel has to come back if we're having just the radio discovery conversation, especially with companies that have talent, that are passionate about the music. And I can point to a couple of examples where recently I've heard morning DJs lean into the lyrics of songs again. Like, it's just so refreshing to hear the passion and that easy bridge to the music. And Sam, as you just think about how some of these cycles have ended for other formats, and even how it ended for country, and I hate the word bro country, but even after it ended for bro country, what are some things that we should just be looking at? We talked already about how we should be, doing research on our audience, asking, does it fit? Does it fit right with our station? Does it fit right with our market? And we, some of the questions we should be asking. But when you just look at the end of these particular cycles, I just want to make sure that we don't end up like we did in 2016. And here's why: because the format is 2015, 2016. Pop kind of had a little bit of a run right there. You had the Timberlake stuff and the Trolls stuff, and there was a pretty good couple of years of pop. But then country really didn't know what it had. We were a couple of years away from Luke. We were a couple of years away from Morgan Wallen being launched. We kind of had a boyfriend country area, and then COVID hit. And then we really didn't know what to do during COVID. And so now here we are, 8 years later, finally finding our footing again as a format, just trying not to make the same mistakes that we did 8 years ago.
Well, the biggest mistake I think we can make, and I think researchers perpetuate this mistake sometimes, which is we want to find a sound that we can put a label on, right? So we can go find more of that, right? And the beauty, I think, of what's going on is this defies that. No one, the Wall Street Journal couldn't put a name on this. I can't put a name on this. If I'm going to a project, go, okay, so tell me, well, what is this? It's just new. It's just great new country. And actually, that's an awesome answer, right? But hope to God that there aren't people who are looking right now out there trolling for the clones. You know, we need our person who fits this slot so we can have our own Morgan. You know, that would be terrible, right? Rather, keep the authenticity machine going, right? Keep looking, keep trying, keep pushing, you know, um, but stay authentic and stay close to the listener. They'll tell you when they've had enough. You know, they'll tell you when you've gone too far this way or too far that way. I'm hoping, you know, um, but they've helped us get to this moment. They fueled this to a large extent, right? You know, again, someday somebody's going to write a book and say this whole thing was orchestrated. You know, you missed the conspiracy theory saying, but I don't think so. I think they brought us here, you know, and just stay with them as they evolve and take it further.
And Kathleen, fair to say that whether you're programming a radio station, curating a channel, if you're in the country music business, you're in the discovery business. Fair?
I would hope everyone feels that way for sure. No, I definitely just absolutely want to super second what Sam just said. I mean, when you think about, you know, having breakout stars in Tyler Childers, Zach Bryan, Morgan Wallen, Post Malone, Jelly Roll. I mean, you can't connect these sonically, you know, they worked because they're capitalizing on a same sound, and that's why we're having this successful moment. It's a consumer behavior trend. It's not, you know, a sonic trend that we're chasing. So it's limited, you know, it's ceiling for discovery and for new artists to come out of this. I don't think that we have as close to the ceiling as, okay, well, at some point everybody's going to get tired of this sound, and then we're going to have to wait and see what the next thing is and then start developing those artists. No, it's music discovery. There's no hard and fast rule for who is going to be the next, you know, artists to really take off, or sound that's going to, you know, entrance this whole new growth sector of listeners, which is really exciting, and all the more reason to be taking risks and looking for early indicators as soon as possible on new music.
Kathleen, I'm going to flip it back to you in just a second. And same question back to you. And it's okay. And Sam, to you as well. You can plug whatever you want to plug at this particular moment. But Brittany, I want to start with you. If I'm just now kind of wrapping my head around the fact that I have to be in the discovery business, whether again, I'm running a radio station, curating a playlist, whatever it might be, we're in this moment. We want to be in the discovery business. Give me a couple places that you're kind of looking and seeking out some of these new songs.
Yeah, I mean, I think a easy way is all of the streaming platforms' new music playlists. Right away, you know, at 11:01 p.m. Central Time, because I'm on Central, refreshed, and you have that week's new focus tracks. Of course, kind of to Kathleen's point, you know, that isn't only the focus tracks, and of course, you're not digging deeper, but that at least could give you an indication and maybe dig deeper into that artist. Whether it's an EP that was just released, an album, or maybe it's just a single. But I think that's just such an easy tool that, you know, anybody could utilize. I think also the power of social media. I know that it's kind of a little bit bittersweet for some folks, but it is still a massive discovery tool for the consumer, whatever genre it is, but also for us as an industry. So I don't think we can discredit the power of social media, whether it's, you know, TikTok or Instagram. I mean, those are really the two big ones. And I think just listening too, I think something we all get into our own ways and listening to what other people are listening to, keeping our ears open, watching what people are posting, just kind of being curious. I think that there's so many different ways to continue to discover music.
Love the C word, curious. That's a great one. Kathleen, how about you?
I would also say, like, never underestimate the power of focus grouping people around you, especially if there's someone around you who is matching the target audience that you're hoping to gain as a listener. I think that for the Highways programming team, it's been really great because we have 3 people who all have, you know, their own music discovery habits and listening habits, and you know, maybe one of us is Gen Z with a 12-hour a day screen time and spends a lot of time on TikTok, and that's where I'm finding a lot of my stuff. But it's great because we're all bringing our own things to the table. And even if you're not programming by committee, there's going to be somebody near you that you can genuinely ask, like, what are you excited about right now? Like, what do I need to know about? What are, you know, be it an artist or a way that they're finding music, that's always helpful because you only know your own experience and you're going to have all your own algorithms that are curated to you as a listener, which might not be the same as who your audience is. So that's always something that I recommend as well. I find it's always helpful.
Anything else to add to that, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, we all have somebody like that in our life. You know, to me, it's my daughter who's always telling me I don't get it and I don't know what's going on. And by the way, I need some money to go to this show. But you got to listen to all these people to you know, if you can't do it, you know, in a more scientific way. You know, the question that I would love to ask in a focus group is right now is what is country music? And really try to distill, because that's the guiding light, you know, through all of this. And it has a lot to do with lyrics for sure. And it has a lot to do with a genuine American story. And we know that the American story is evolving, and that's why the music is evolving, I believe, you know. And what we thought was the story 20 years ago, it probably was a myth to begin with, that you know, stereotypical country person and that stereotypical country lifestyle didn't really even exist. But today, there's a lifestyle that is uniquely American, it's uniquely of today, and this music speaks to them so loudly. And if we can put our arms around that and understand it, again, I think we can push this out for another decade or two.
Oh, I love your enthusiasm and optimism on that. And Sam, real quick hit for you, because you've done so many other formats and you see such a wide lens on the music business. Is there a parallel in country and hip hop right now that we're not necessarily seeing? Is there something we should just be looking into? Because it's almost like it's flipped. Like there used to be all these really high streaming, high consuming hip hop songs, but now all of a sudden you look at the top just songs overall, and they're mainly listed as country songs now.
Well, it was hip hop in a moment where, you know, hip hop is the poetry of a certain part of America, right? It's the way they speak, it's the way they think about the world, and they were able to turn that into a music that spoke to people, and we can do that also. The other analogy that keeps going through my head is the early days of alternative, you know, where all of a sudden there was music that didn't sound like anything else, but that wasn't just it. It was talking to people in, you know, around the way they saw the world. Sure, it had a lot to do with Seattle and grunge and all that, but and all that dissatisfaction, but it spoke to people. And when it stopped speaking to people, that's when it lost the plot, right? You know, what the bands that wanted to be like so and so and so and so and so. So that's the mistake we don't want to make. But as long as we keep telling authentic American stories through the music, I think that this has longevity.
I really think that's the North Star. When we think about the takeaways from this particular podcast, and the three of you have been brilliant. Thank you for your time and your insights and staying curious. Ask us all of the questions that we didn't necessarily get a chance to answer, because we could talk about this for another hour or two, but by God, Kathleen's got to go and get married this week, and Brittany's got to start a new job and do all the things and get going. So congratulations to you both, and thank you for the time in such a crazy busy week with everybody doing everything. Real quick, round the horn, quick hit, song of the summer. Brittany, you go first.
Anything Sabrina Carpenter. Currently right now, Taste with her new album that came out. Sorry, that was not country.
No, it's okay. That's strong. That's strong, Kathleen.
Yeah.
I'll also do a not country since we started here, all right? Because country's too easy. I'm gonna go Chapel Roan. Good luck, babe, for sure.
Dang it, that was mine. How about you, Sam?
I don't have a song of the summer yet, but Chapel, I'm right there with you.
Summer's almost over.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go hot to go just from the chaperone because I'm all down. I'm all for it. Again, discovering, being curious about what's going on in our world. Please reach out to these folks and pick their brain. They are a wealth of information. They are exactly who we needed to have on this particular topic. Thank you so much for your time. You can follow Country Radio Seminar and CRS on all of the social media platforms. And it's crazy to think that we will be together in 6 months, but the magic of CRS is the hallway conversations that come out of that conference. And so we encourage all of the hallway conversations with myself, Kenny J, and Sam, Brittany, Kathleen. Thank you again for your time with CRS.